When my daughter-in-law told me to leave the house, I did not cry. I remember that moment very clearly. I remember the way the evening light touched the walls. I remember the soft sound of the ceiling fan. I remember the smell of the food I had cooked that afternoon. And yet, inside me, something felt like it broke. But outside, I smiled. I smiled because I did not want to make the situation heavier. I smiled because I did not want anyone to feel guilty. I smiled because sometimes silence is the only strength left in a mother's heart. That evening, when the words left her mouth, "Maybe you should go back to your old home for some time," I felt the world grow quiet around me. Not angry, not loud, just quiet. I looked at her face. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't cruel. She looked tired, confused, frustrated. Maybe she was dealing with her own burdens. But still, those words landed deeply inside my chest. I nodded gently. I said, "It's okay, Beta. If this is what you want, I will go." And I gave a small smile, a smile that did not match the heaviness inside me. I went to my room, closed the door slowly, sat on the bed, and for a long moment, I just breathed. That night, I packed my clothes quietly. I folded every piece with care. Even though my hands trembled, I tied my scarf slowly. Like I needed time to prepare my heart. I left the house early next morning, and oh drama, and oh noise, and oh tears on the outside. But inside, there was a storm I could not show to anyone. I told myself, maybe time will fix everything. Maybe she will understand one day. Maybe she will come to me. Maybe she will say sorry. I did not know when, I did not know how, but I held on to a small hope, a soft, fragile hope that life would bring us back to a moment of understanding. And now, as I sit here and share the story with you, I want to tell you everything. How it started, how it grew heavier, how it broke me, and how one day she finally came to say sorry, even though it was late, even though things had already changed, even though life had taken us down separate paths. This is not a story of revenge, not a story of anger, not even a story of blame. It is a story of a mother's heart, a story of silence, a story of waiting, and a story of a late apology that brought both pain and peace. Let me begin from the start. I grew up in a small, warm home filled with simple joys. We didn't have much, but we had love. And my mother used to say, home is not about the walls. It is about the hearts living inside. When I got married, I carried those words with me. I tried to build a home with the same warmth, simple meals, simple habits, simple hopes. When my son was born, I felt like a new chapter had opened. He was quiet as a child, gentle in his own way. He liked sitting close to me when he was tired. He liked holding my hand when he felt uncertain. He liked listening to stories before sleeping. For years, it was just him and me. We learned life together. We carried each other through difficult days. We celebrated small victories, his first steps, his first word, his school achievements. And when he grew older, I began thinking about the girl who would enter his life one day. I never imagined a daughter-in-law as a burden or an outsider. I imagined her as family, someone I would welcome, someone I would care for, someone I would treat like a daughter. When he told me he wanted to get married, I smiled with real happiness. I asked him about the girl. He told me she was educated, kind, hardworking. He said she understood him. He said she made him feel peaceful. What more could a mother want? The first day I met her, she greeted me politely, a little shy, a little nervous, a little distant, but I did not mind. New relationships take time to bloom. I opened my heart to her. I welcomed her with warmth. I prayed that our connection would grow into something beautiful. When she entered our home as a bride, I looked at her with soft hope. I wanted her to feel safe. I wanted her to feel valued. I wanted her to feel like she had a second mother in me. The early weeks were calm, quiet, full of learning. She woke up early. She helped with breakfast. She smiled often, though sometimes her smile felt tired. She was adjusting to a new home, new people, new routines, and I understood how heavy that can feel. I tried not to correct her too much. I tried not to interfere. I let her do things her own way. I told myself, she needs space to feel like this is her home too. My son was happy, and that made me happy. We would often sit together at the dining table, the three of us, talking softly about small things, work, weather, daily routines. But slowly, very slowly, I began to feel a small distance growing, not sharp, not painful at first, just a quiet gap, like someone taking one small step backward every day. She stopped sitting with me as often. She spent more time in her room. She cooked only what she liked. She began making decisions without including me. I told myself, it's normal. Young couples need privacy. And I stepped back. But the distance grew a little more, like a shadow lengthening every evening. My son also changed a little, not intentionally, not cruelly, just quietly. He came home tired, talked less, sat with me less, spent more time with her. And again, it was normal. He was a husband now, and his priorities were shifting. Still, deep inside, I felt myself slipping into the background, not pushed, not thrown. Just slowly fading from the center of their world. One day, I heard soft voices from their room, not shouting, not loud, but heavy that I didn't want to listen, that I didn't want to know. But the walls carried the sound. She always interferes, she said. I feel like I cannot breathe freely in this house. My son answered quietly. She is my mother. She doesn't mean harm. Her reply came like a small knife. I know she is your mother, but this house doesn't feel like mine. I remember holding the edge of the kitchen counter. I remember telling myself, don't take it to heart. She is young. She is stressed. She doesn't understand your intentions yet. But something inside me softened that day, softened in a way that made me fragile, still. I kept trying. I asked her gently if she needed help. She said no. I asked her if she wanted to learn any of our old family recipes. She said she preferred cooking her own way. I asked her if she wanted to join me for evening tea. She said she was tired. IT was okay. I told myself IT was all okay. But the silence between us kept growing. One evening, my son came home frustrated from work. They argued, small things, tiny misunderstandings. Tension filled the air like invisible smoke. I tried to lighten the atmosphere, but my presence only seemed to make it heavier. That night, I sat alone on the sofa. The lights were dim. The house felt different. Not mine anymore, not fully theirs either. Just a place with three quiet hearts learning to live together. I touched the old family photo frame on the table, me and my son, smiling widely during his school days, his small hand in mine, his face glowing with innocence. I whispered to myself, life changes. People grow. Homes evolve. You have to let go sometimes. But letting go is easy to say and difficult to do. As weeks passed, the distance became routine. My voice grew smaller in the house. My presence felt like an old memory still sitting on a new couch. And then the day arrived. The day when everything inside me quietly cracked. It was a rainy afternoon. The sky was gray. The air smelled of wet earth. Raindrops tapped gently on the windows. I was in the kitchen preparing tea, humming a soft tune to myself. My son was still at work. She was in the living room, scrolling through her phone, looking tired and irritated. I made 2 cups of tea, one for her, one for me. I walked slowly to the living room and placed the cup on the table near her. She didn't look up. She didn't smile. She didn't say thank you. She just said, I told you. I don't like tea in the afternoon. Her tone wasn't cruel, just cold, tired, disconnected. I nodded softly. I forgot, Beta. I'm sorry. I took the cup back quietly. That moment felt small, but small moments sometimes become turning points. That evening, she and my son argued again. Their voices were not loud, but their words held weight. I heard my name, not always directly, but through hints. She gets too involved. She needs everything done her way. She doesn't understand boundaries. Painful words, not shouted. Just softly spoken burdens. I stayed in my room, pretending not to hear. I folded my clothes slowly. I wiped the mirror for no reason. I sat on the bed and touched the old blanket stitched by my mother. The house felt like it was shrinking around me. The next day, the argument grew heavier. I was in the kitchen again. I heard her say, I cannot live like this. I feel judged all the time. Judged for what? I had never said anything hurtful. I had never raised my voice. I had never tried to control her. Maybe my existence itself felt like a pressure to her. MY's son tried to calm her, but I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. Later that night, he came to my room. He looked tired, his shoulders heavy. Amy, things are getting difficult, he said softly. I nodded. I know, Beta. She says she feels suffocated, he whispered. And I don't know what to do. I looked at him, MY's son. The boy who once held my hand tightly, now a man caught between the 2 women in his life. I don't want to hurt her. I don't want to hurt you, he said. My heart softened. He was trying. He was struggling. He was torn apart. I placed my hand on his quietly. You don't have to choose, Beta. I will make it easy. He looked confused. What do you mean? I will step back, I whispered. I will give you both space. I will take care of myself. He closed his eyes slowly. A tear escaped. Amy, I don't want you to feel unwanted. I smiled softly. It's okay. Even though it wasn't. The next few days were calm on the surface, but the silence underneath was loud. She avoided me more. I avoided getting in her way. MY's son tried to keep harmony, but harmony built on silence is fragile. And then, the moment finally came, to a moment I still remember like a quiet wound. It was a late afternoon. The sunlight was orange. The house was quiet. She came to me, not angry, not shouting, just tired, deeply tired. She stood near the doorway of my room and said, I think maybe you should go back to your old home for some time. My heart froze, but my face stayed calm. I looked at her. Her eyes were not cruel. Her voice wasn't sharp. She just wanted space. Space from me. I inhaled deeply, let the pain settle softly, and then I said, It's okay, Beta. If this is what you want, I will go. And I smiled, a small smile, a gentle smile, a smile that tried to hide the pain I felt. She looked relieved, relief that felt like a quiet knife. I packed that evening, slow movements, soft breaths, silent tears that never fell from my eyes but gathered inside my heart. The next morning, I left, with a small bag, with a quiet goodbye, with a prayer that maybe one day she would understand what that moment felt like for me. When I reached my old home, the silence greeted me first. It was the kind of silence that waits for you at the door, wraps around your shoulders, and stays with you like an old memory. I placed my small bag on the floor and looked around the room I had once lived in. The paint was a little faded, the furniture a little older, the air a little colder, but somehow, it felt like the silence understood me better than people did. I sat on the edge of the bed and let out a long breath, not a cry, not a sob. Just a breath that had been waiting inside me for years. For the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of everything. Not the anger, because I had none. Not the blame, because I didn't want to hold any. Just the quiet ache of a mother who had stepped aside to save peace in a home. Days passed slowly till I woke up early, made simple breakfast, sat near the window, and watched the morning sun soften the rooftops. Sometimes, I touched my phone, thinking my son might call. Sometimes, I wondered if she thought of me. But there was only silence. I told myself, they need time. They need space. Let them breathe. But deep inside, another voice whispered, Do they miss you? Do they even notice you are gone? I brushed that voice away, but it kept returning at night when the world grew quiet. One evening, after almost 2 weeks, my son called. His voice sounded different, a little distant, a little guilty. Amy, how are you? I'm fine, Beta, I said softly. Are you eating properly? Yes. Do you need anything? No, Beta. There was a pause, a long, heavy pause. He finally said, Things are settling here. She just needs some time. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. It's okay, I whispered. You both take your time. But after the call ended, I held the phone in my hand for a long moment. The screen was dark, but it felt like my heart had dimmed with it. That night, I sat by the window again. The streetlight flickered outside. A soft breeze carried the smell of earth. I whispered to myself, I hope they are truly okay. I hope I made the right choice by leaving. But a small part of me, a fragile, hidden part, wondered if anyone was thinking the same about me. The day everything broke inside me, about a month passed, a month of routine, a month of quiet, a month of pretending I was fine. Then one evening, my neighbor, an older woman, came to visit. She sat beside me, holding a warm cup of tea. Beta, she said gently, I heard you are living alone again. Is everything okay? I smiled, the same soft smile I had used when my daughter-in-law asked me to leave. Yes, everything is fine. But the moment she left, my smile faded. Not because she asked the question, but because I finally realized I had been hiding the pain for myself. That night, I cried quietly for the first time, not loudly, not dramatically, just a soft, silent stream of tears that slipped down my face like rain on a window. I wasn't crying because I was unwanted. I wasn't crying because I was alone. I wasn't crying because I had been pushed aside. I was crying because the home I had built with years of love no longer had a place for me. My health began to change. Stress does not shout. It whispers slowly. It sits inside your bones. It hides beneath your breath. I began waking up with headaches. My hands trembled sometimes. My appetite shrank. Even the smallest tasks felt heavier. One day, while sweeping the floor, I suddenly felt lightheaded. The broom slipped from my hand. I grabbed the wall to steady myself. I sat down on the bed, breathing slowly, telling myself, "You're just tired. You need rest. That's all." But deep inside, I knew it wasn't just tiredness. It was the quiet ache of loneliness taking root inside me. Still, I didn't tell my son. He was busy. She was adjusting. Their marriage needed peace. I didn't want to become a burden. Months passed, and no one asked me to return 4 months. That's how long it took for the truth to sink in. Not once did she call. Not once did she ask how I was. Not once did she say, "Come home, Amy. We miss you." My son visited occasionally, but our conversations were short. He always looked tired, always in a hurry, always carrying invisible weight. I never asked him about her feelings, and I never asked if she wanted me back, because I already knew the answer. Sometimes, late at night, I asked myself, what did I do wrong? Where did the bond break? Was I too quiet, too present, or simply too old for their new life? No clear answer ever came. The invisible distance became permanent. One chilly evening, my son visited again. He brought groceries, sat for 15 minutes, spoke softly, then stood up to leave. I walked him to the door. As he put on his shoes, I asked gently, "Beta, how is she?" He paused for a second. "Fine," he said, just one word, nothing more. And that was the moment I knew. He was protecting her feelings, not mine. It wasn't his fault. He loved her. He wanted harmony, but the reality quietly settled into my heart. I was no longer part of their home. I was a quiet memory they visited sometimes, but never brought back with them. The turning point deep in winter came. The nights grew colder, the days shorter, the silence heavier. My health declined more, not dramatically, just slowly. I moved slower, ached more, felt tired even after resting. One night, while sitting under the blanket, I placed my hand on my chest. There was a tightness there, not physical, emotional. I realized something heartbreaking. I wasn't waiting for her apology anymore. I wasn't waiting for her to come and say sorry. I wasn't waiting for her to understand. I had started accepting my place outside their life, and that acceptance broke me in a quiet, gentle way. I whispered into the darkness, "Maybe this is how life works. Maybe some journeys end before the heart is ready. Maybe love changes shape as time passes." I closed my eyes and sighed softly, a sigh that carried months of silent pain. That night, I felt something inside me shift, not anger, not resentment, just a slow, deep acceptance that life had moved forward, and I was no longer walking in the same direction as them. This was the turning point. The moment I stopped expecting, the moment I stopped hoping, the moment I let go. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no strength left to hold on. And then months later, she came, knocking on my door, the same daughter-in-law who once asked me to leave, the same girl I had welcomed with love, the same voice that had broken me quietly. She stood there with tears in her eyes, and this is where the story turns, not toward a perfect ending, not toward a full reconciliation, but toward a late apology that brought both pain and peace. She came to say sorry, but it was already too late for some things. The knock on the door was soft at first, almost unsure, almost like the person on the other side did not fully believe they should be there. I was sitting on the floor that day, folding some old clothes, trying to keep my hands busy so my mind would not wander too far into memories. The sound made me pause for a moment. I wondered if I had imagined it, and no one usually came to see me. Days passed without a single knock. Then it came. Again, a little louder this time, but still hesitant. I placed the clothes aside and stood up slowly, and my knees ached, and I held the edge of the bed to steady myself. When I reached the door, I took a small breath before opening it, and there she was, my daughter-in-law, the girl I had once hugged like my own daughter, the girl I had prayed for every morning, the girl who had looked me in the eyes and told me to leave. She stood there with swollen eyes, her lips trembling slightly. She looked thinner, tired, different. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The wind moved quietly behind her, carrying the scent of dust and distant rain. She lowered her eyes. "Amy," she whispered. The words sounded fragile, as if it had been waiting in her throat for months. I felt something inside me shift, not joy, not anger, not relief, just a quiet, deep ache of memories returning. "Come inside," I said softly. She walked in, slow and unsure, as if she was not sure she deserved to enter. She sat on the small sofa, her hands shook slightly as she held them together. For a few seconds, we sat in silence. I did not ask why she came. She did not start speaking. The room felt heavy, but not angry, just full of unspoken things. Finally, she looked up and her voice broke. Amy, I am sorry. I blinked slowly. The words had come, but they did not land the way she expected. They didn't feel warm. They didn't feel healing. They felt late. Still, I stayed quiet, letting her speak. I was wrong, she whispered. I was stressed. I was confused. I was emotional. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. I shouldn't have asked you to leave. A tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it quickly, almost ashamed of letting it fall. I listened without interrupting. Her voice shook more with every word. You were only trying to help. You cooked for us. You cared for us. You tried to make our home peaceful. But I thought you were judging me. I thought you didn't like the way I did things. I thought you wanted control. She paused. Her breathing grew heavier. I misunderstood you, Amy, and I hurt you. I looked at her quietly. Her face was softer than before, not the same girl who had spoken sharply to me months ago. Life had taught her something in the time we were apart. She continued, voice trembling. You were alone all these months, and I did not call you. I did not ask if you were okay. I did not check on your health. I was stubborn, and I let my ego stay above your pain. Her tears came freely now. I am so sorry. I wanted to hug her, but something held me back. A part of my heart, the motherly part, wanted to pull her close, wanted to wipe her tears, wanted to say, it's okay, Beta. Let it go. But another part of me, the part that had quietly suffered, the part that had cried alone, the part that had waited for months without being remembered, that part could not move. I didn't feel anger, just a deep, slow sadness that had settled so long inside me that it had become part of my bones. I looked at her gently and said in a soft voice, I never wanted control. Beta, I only wanted to help. I wanted you to feel supported. I wanted you to feel that our home was yours. Her tears kept falling. I know, she whispered. I understand now. I shouldn't have asked you to leave. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. I hurt you without thinking. I nodded slowly, not in agreement, but in acceptance. You were young, I said softly. You were learning. Sometimes we understand things only when time teaches us. She covered her face with her hands and cried quietly. Her shoulders shook. I could see guilt weighing on her. I felt pity for her, but I also felt the distance that had grown between us, the distance that no apology could fully erase. The apology came, but the wound remained. She took a deep breath and said, Amy, come home. The words echoed faintly in the small room. Come home. The home I had built. The home I had left. The home that had pushed me away. For a moment, my heart trembled. A familiar warmth rose inside me. The longing to be with my son again, to sit at the family table, to hear footsteps in the hallway, to cook in the kitchen with laughter around. But then reality returned. The loneliness, the months of silence, the heavy acceptance that had settled in me, the realization that I had learned to live differently. Now I looked at her softly and said, Beta, you came to say sorry, and I accept your apology, truly. Her eyes lifted with a small, hopeful light, but I whispered gently, some wounds do not heal by going back. Some wounds heal by staying where you are and finding peace. Her hope dimmed slightly, not broken, just shaken. Amy, you don't want to come home? I pressed my hands together in my lap. I don't want to disturb your new life. I don't want to be a shadow in your home. I don't want you to feel pressure because of me. She shook her head quickly. No, Amy. You won't disturb anything. I promise. I raised my hand gently. It's not about disturbance, Beta. It's about peace, your peace and my peace. She fell silent again. Some truths are difficult to say, but heavier to keep. I spoke slowly, choosing every word with care. Sometimes, a place where you were once happy becomes a place where you carry pain. If you go back, you carry that pain with you every day. Even if the people change, the memories remain. She lowered her eyes, tears falling again. I continued. You asked me to leave once. I listened because I wanted your happiness. And now, I want you to know I am not angry. I am not upset. I have just found a different quiet inside myself. She whispered, Do you not trust me anymore? I shook my head softly. It's not about trust. It's about acceptance. Life has changed, Beta. You have changed. Your home has changed. And I have learned to build a small life here. Her lips trembled. I thought bringing you back would fix everything. I smiled gently. A house is fixed with love, not by undoing the past. She cried more softly now, not loudly, not painfully, just a gentle, regretful cry of someone who understood the truth too late. She held my hand, she moved closer, and held my hands in hers. Her touch was warm, but there was a deep sadness in it. Amy, I hurt you. Did I know I cannot change the past? I know I cannot erase what I said. But please, please don't distance yourself from us. I squeeze her hand lightly. I am not distancing. I am simply choosing peace. Will you come sometimes? She whispered. To visit? I smiled softly. Yes, Beta, that I will come, and you can come here. We can still have a bond, a gentle bond, without expectations. She nodded slowly, though her heart clearly wanted more. A late apology still carries value. Even if it cannot fix everything, she stayed for a while. We talked softly. We drank tea together. She looked around the small home as if seeing my loneliness for the first time. Before leaving, she hugged me. Her arms were tight, her breath shaky. I am sorry, she whispered again. I know, I said gently, and I forgive you. But forgiveness does not erase the past. It only brings peace to it. When she stepped outside, I walked her to the door. She turned back one last time and said, I will try to be better. I will try to understand more. I will try to make things right. I nodded. As long as you try with honesty, Beta, that is enough. She left with slow steps. I closed the door quietly, leaned against it, and let out a soft breath. The kind that comes when a heart finally releases something heavy. This was the turning point. Not a happy one, and not a dramatic one, and not a magical one. Just a simple, honest moment where an apology came late and peace came quietly. I stood by the window that night, listening to the quiet hum of the street outside. The house felt different now. Not broken, not complete. Something in between, like the silence after rain. Not full sunshine, not storm. Just waiting. I kept remembering her words. I am sorry. I was wrong. Simple words, but heavy words. Words that had crossed a long road before reaching my ears. I sat on my bed and held my hands together. My fingers were shaking a little. I do not know why. Maybe it was relief. Maybe it was pain. Maybe it was both. Sitting side by side, the way shadows sit next to light, I kept thinking of the young girl she used to be. Excited, energetic, full of plans. I saw her again in my mind, standing in the kitchen the day she first entered my home. Nervous, holding a small plate of sweets, trying to smile even though her hands were shaking. She was not a bad person. She was just a human being who made mistakes, just like me, just like anyone in this world. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, maybe forgiveness is not only for her. Maybe it is for me too. A tear rolled down, but it felt warm, not sharp. It felt soft, like it came with understanding, not hurt. Next morning I woke up early. I made my tea. I sat by the window again. The sunlight slowly entered my room like a shy guest. Everything looked calm. Even the chair, even the cup, even the corner of the curtain. Then my daughter-in-law called. Her voice was quiet. Mother, can I come again today? I want to talk. I took a breath, a long, slow breath, not because I was angry, but because I was preparing my heart. Yes, I said softly. Come. When she arrived, she looked tired. Not from the outside, from the inside. Her eyes were red. She sat slowly, like someone carrying a weight she could no longer hide. She said, I have been thinking about you all night. I kept remembering the day I asked you to leave. I kept seeing your face. You didn't shout. You didn't even question me. You just smiled and accepted it. Mother, why did you do that? I looked at her carefully, and then I answered, because fighting with you would hurt my son. And hurting you would hurt him too. And at that moment, I loved him more than I loved myself. She began crying again. But this time, the tears were deeper. Not guilt, not fear. Something else, maybe realization, maybe maturity, maybe both. She leaned forward and whispered, I wish I had understood your heart earlier. I nodded gently. Then she said something that stayed with me. Mother, I cannot undo what I did. But if you allow me, I want to learn. I want to be better. Not perfect, just better. Her voice cracked. I do not expect us to go back to the past. I just hope we can build something new. Her honesty surprised me. It touched a place in me that I thought had closed forever. I placed my hand on hers, and I said, we cannot erase yesterday, but we can choose how we walk tomorrow. She closed her eyes and held my hand tighter. not as a daughter dash and dash laud, as a human being seeking another human being's forgiveness. But life is not a storybook. Forgiveness did not erase everything. The pain did not disappear in one moment. My trust did not return fully. Her guilt did not fade instantly. We were still two wounded hearts learning to speak again. She tried. She visited. She called. She cooked for me sometimes. She brought small gifts. Not expensive ones. Simple ones. Like fresh flowers. Or a warm scarf. Or a box of biscuits she baked herself. I could see she was trying to heal something that she had once broken, and I appreciated it, but inside me, some pieces moved slowly, very slowly, like a clock that still works but ticks quietly after being repaired. I was no longer angry, but I was careful, soft, but careful, and that was okay. Healing is not erased. It is a gentle walk. My son's part. My son visited later that week. He sat next to me, holding his cup of tea with both hands. He looked older, more thoughtful. He finally spoke after a long silence. Amy, I am sorry too. I looked up. It was my duty to protect you. And I failed. I shook my head. No. You were trying to protect your marriage. And that was also your duty. Life gives us difficult choices, Beta. None of them are perfect. He lowered his eyes. But I hurt you. I touched his shoulder slowly. You didn't hurt me. Circumstance did. He nodded, tears forming. That moment, I realized something. He had also been hurting all this time. He had carried the weight of two worlds, his mother and his wife, and when he could not balance them, he broke inside. I did not blame him. Not anymore, not ever again. We talked for a long time. Not about pain. Not about blame. Just about life. About memories. About future plans. About how we would walk forward as a family, carefully, but with hope to visit. That changed something. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. My daughter-in-law came again, but this time she brought a small notebook. She placed it in my hands and said, I wrote something for you. When I opened it, I found small handwritten lines, not poems, not stories, just moments. Moments she remembered about me, like, Mother taught me how to cook rice without burning it. Mother gave me her shawl when I was cold. Mother held my hand when I was scared to visit the doctor. Mother smiled even when I made mistakes. Some lines made me smile, some made me cry, some made me stop and breathe deeply. At the end of the notebook, she wrote, I may not have understood your heart when I should have, but now I do. Thank you for being patient with someone like me. I closed the notebook and held it close to my chest. For the first time in a long time, I felt something melt inside me. Not completely, but enough. Enough to let light enter again. The last conversation before she left, that day before she stood up to leave, she said, Mother, I know things will not go back to what they were before. I know I hurt you deeply. I know you still carry that day inside you. But please allow me to be a better daughter-in-law. Maybe not perfect, maybe not fast, but better. Her voice trembled. And if one day you feel ready to come home again, we will welcome you with open arms. Not because we need you, but because we want you. Her words were gentle, sincere, not forceful, not demanding. That I smiled softly, and I said, we will walk slowly, one small step at a time. She nodded. Then she whispered the same line again, the line that had changed everything. I am sorry. And this time, I accepted it in my heart, not completely healed, not completely broken, just breathing again. After she left, I looked around my small home. The chair, the window, the simple sunlight on the floor, everything felt peaceful. Life had not given me a perfect ending, but it had given me a gentle one, a human one. People make mistakes, even the ones we love, even the ones we live with, and sometimes the apology comes late, but it still comes with a heart that has grown wiser. Forgiving does not mean forgetting. It does not mean pretending nothing happened. It does not mean returning to the same place. Forgiving means choosing peace over pain, choosing healing over holding on, choosing to move forward, even if the steps are small. As I closed my eyes that evening, I whispered to myself, some relationships do not go back to the past, but they can still find a new beginning. And that is enough. That is more than enough. Because in the end, the heart does not need a perfect ending. It only needs a peaceful one.